realistically, you don't have a lot of control over your time. Getting on the podium is another one, qualifying, getting out like BQs, whatever that looks like. All of these things are have way too many factors external to you that you have no control over. So setting goals around those is really, really challenging, which is why I kind of see them as BHAG type goals.
Welcome to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Schmidt, off-road endurance athlete and mental health mentor. If you're really serious about getting that next PB, you can't overlook taking care of your mental health. Because although mental health and sport performance might seem completely unrelated, when you look at how your body actually works, you'll find out that they're two sides of the same coin, which means prioritizing your mental health will boost your sport performance. I'll dive deep into the scientific connections between mental health and sport performance and give you practical strategies that will get you to the root of your depression and anxiety so that you can feel your best and perform even better.
Welcome back to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. I am so excited that you're here. It's season 2. So we wrapped up season 1 in August. I've taken a little break and now it's December. We're back and I am so ready to go for next season. I've already got some pretty sweet interviews lined up. Some recorded already even. Look at me go. And it's going to be a really, really great season where we dive back into all things of that intersection between mental health and sport performance. So how can you take care of your mental health and how is that actually going to benefit your sport performance as well? So it's going to be an awesome season. I'm really looking forward to it. Since August, I have taken mostly an off season in training. So I hope you've done that too, because race season is a lot and it's not even so much the actual racing because like let's be honest, I love racing. I hope you love racing too, and if you don't love racing or maybe you don't race at all, but I hope that you're at least taking adventures and doing things that are really exciting for you, whatever that looks like. But it's important to take a break, and it seems like every year my breaks get just a little bit longer. I think I'm having more tolerance around like not having structured training. So, like many people, I came to endurance sport because I was really struggling with my mental health. So, running at the time became that thing that was like probably my main mental health support. I was doing some other stuff too, but in general, like running was like really that place where I felt free. And eventually now this for me has transitioned into triathlon. But I think a lot of us come to endurance sport from this place, and so taking an off season can feel really, really scary because, you're running, you're swimming, you're biking, whatever endurance sport you're doing is the place that you go when you need to support yourself. And that's how you support yourself. So that's really hard. So I think I'm getting a little more tolerance, and I would encourage you guys to try that too, just to give yourself some space. Now, this doesn't mean you like stop all physical activity and just like be a bum. That's not what it's about. But like I walked a lot. I walked a lot, you guys. It's cool because I live in the mountains. It's a beautiful place. I run and bike these trails all the time, but I don't necessarily slow down a whole lot to be able to, even just do something like stop and take pictures of things or enjoy the scenery that I'm seeing. Sit on the bench that's at the top of the hill instead of just running right by it, kind of a thing. So I took a lot of time to be able to just like slow down a little bit. I had some pretty awesome still like run and bike adventures, but the focus was not structured training, which also allowed me to do a lot of stuff in my business, which has been really cool. So I have some new stuff coming. There's been a little bit of a shift. It's going to be really cool. I think you guys are going to love it. I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be rolling out slowly as we move through 2025. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about reflection and goal setting. It's that time of year where we really think about what happened this last year. We reflect on what happened. And then we also start to, goal set New Year's resolutions, all these types of things for the new year. So it's a really exciting time of year where we can really like go inwards and think about how we want things to change, how we want things to shift, how things are actually working for us and what stuff isn't. It's a great time of year. I love it. I love doing this work. And I think some of this is going to challenge you a little bit today. So one of the things that really started me thinking about this process was a few weeks ago, I had somebody sent me a message to ask me for my address because they were going to send me a Christmas card. And I move a lot. So pretty much every year my address changes. So people know better than to just send me things. And I got this message and I started thinking to myself, like, man, I don't send Christmas cards. I don't know. I just never, I haven't really, I think I've maybe sent them a couple years, but in general, I don't really send Christmas cards. And I started thinking about like the things that we put in Christmas cards. And a lot of people now will send you like one of those photo collages of like, here's all the nice photos of our family from this year. Some people still send the old school Christmas letter. So I started thinking about like, maybe I should send a Christmas card. Like there's people in my life that care about me. They would like to know what I'm up to. They probably like would like to have a photo of me on their fridge. So I started thinking about it, and then I started getting very uncomfortable because when I look at the things that happened in 2024, they're not necessarily things that I would share with every person, things that I would want people to have on their Christmas letter that's like sitting on the kitchen table for anybody to read or include on my photos on the Christmas card. Because 2024 was turbulent for me. I don't know about anybody else, but it was a little bit of a weird year. And I think we all feel that even if it's like a pretty great year, there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we don't talk about with other people and that we're not just going to like willy-nilly include in our Christmas card. But the other thing is like, especially from a sport perspective, like sport is a huge part of my life, huge part of my life. And so, some of the highlights, for example, that I've had this year is like I won my first race. I've never won a race before. I've won my age category. I don't even know if I've stood on the podium, like the overall podium, but I actually won a race. And it's like, no, I felt to me, I was like, nobody cares. You know what I mean? They're gonna be like, oh wow, whatever. It was just like this really lame local gravel race. Like what, like that doesn't mean anything. So it's just things like that where I was starting to kind of get, as I was reflecting on my year, I was starting to get very self-conscious about some of the things that I would see as being accomplishments for myself. And also thinking like really, really big, like not celebrating the small stuff. So there's a few things that I just kind of want to highlight as I go through this conversation with you that's going to help you to reflect a little bit on your own year and some of the things that you can think about. And maybe you send a Christmas letter. Maybe not because Canada Post is on strike, but maybe you'll actually feel a little bit more confident in sharing the things that happened with you this year as opposed to just hiding it. Because when we actually hide this stuff, it impacts our nervous system. So things like shame, okay? So shame is what happens when we actually keep this stuff inside and don't talk about it. Shame is really, really hard on your nervous system. I don't know about you guys, but when somebody asks you like, "Hey, how's it going?" and you're like actually really not doing very well and you have that awkward, and I don't know if you can feel it. Maybe pay attention if you have experienced this but maybe not felt this. But I will get this like kind of awkward feeling in my stomach of like, "Oh, I'm not doing very well, but I have to be positive. So, hey, yeah, I'm doing really good. How are you?" There's this like body sensation that's happening. And that discrepancy between basically your authentic self and your expressed self, if that's what you want to call it, that's really taxing on your nervous system. So constantly hiding things, constantly living in shame is something that's going to dysregulate your nervous system. And that is actually going to affect your mental health. Okay. Nervous system dysregulation is something that we really need to take care of because when our nervous system is always in fight or flight mode or kind of on high gear all the time, we aren't able to relax. And so that's going to just keep us stuck in things like anxiety. The other thing is that it really impacts your sport performance. So when your nervous system is always in fight or flight, or mostly in fight or flight, you're not actually giving your muscles the maximum capacity to be able to recover. So now you're doing hard training sessions, which is also taxing on the nervous system, but sometimes in a healthier way. But then you're not actually able to dedicate all the resources to fully recover. And then you just keep pushing yourself through and then further making yourself kind of come down, right? And then now you've got things happening where your mental health is getting worse as a result of your sport. And that's not what we want. Also, you're getting injured. You probably are super fatigued. There's a lot of stuff happening. So there's a lot of things that hinge on our nervous system being in a really good state. And when we hide stuff from people or when we aren't able to show up in our, full expression of ourselves, that means that there's going to be some sort of nervous system dysregulation that comes as a result of that. Now, does this mean that when somebody asks you how you're doing, you need to just like spill your entire story and tell them how, everything is going awful and you cry every day or whatever? Maybe it's not that extreme. Whatever. You don't need to tell people everything, but you can also just be honest and say things like, today is an okay day. I'm having a bit of a hard time, but I'm doing the best I can. Or, things like this. You don't have to say those kind of like passive, like, I'm all right. You know, you can say whatever things feel comfortable for you, but like essentially lying about how you're feeling is actually really toxic for your body. Okay. And it is going to affect your sport performance too. So don't forget about that. So when I look at how can we reflect on the year and encapsulate the good and the bad, which are both going to be parts of every experience, whether you're reflecting on your year, whether you're reflecting on a race, a workout, an evening that you've spent with your friends, whatever that looks like, we have to be really careful here because we want to be able to capture all of the angles. So what happens is we have something, and it's probably not new to you, but we have something called the negativity bias. And so our brain, because of an evolutionary perspective, essentially, has this tendency to see the negative before you see the positive and to really zone in on the negative. It's not a bad thing from an evolutionary perspective because when we think about survival, which is like the whole goal of basically why everything in our system and in our brain functions the way it does, if we didn't scan our environments for threats or pretend like negative things, there's a pretty darn good chance that you would die. Simple as that. Okay. Our brain is still wired the same way. So when we start to reflect, what tends to happen is we start to pull up all of the negative experiences. So even as I'm thinking about, as I'm talking about 2024, I'm saying 2024 is a very turbulent year. My brain is so zoned in on all of the negative things that happened in 2024. So if this is you as well, you are a human being. Okay. I'm a pretty positive person. I work really hard on this, but even still, like that negativity bias is still there for me. And so as I was reflecting on what I would write in my Christmas letter, I'm pulling up all of these negative things and thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't include that. I can't tell people about that. And then hiding in shame. And then my nervous system is dysregulated, which tanks your mental health and your sport performance. So you can kind of see how this whole cycle works. So when we actually reflect, we want to be able to capture all of the angles. We want to be able to capture, I'm going to say like the extremes, so the good and the bad, but there's also a lot of stuff in between that as well. Where are the things that were just like pretty normal, pretty content, pretty whatever, like they weren't amazing, they weren't awful, but they were fine. Where's all that stuff? We want to capture that kind of thing too. And we really want to allow space to feel emotions about all of the stuff. What I see happen quite often is, and I'm guilty of this as well, is when we reflect, we try, and this is the negativity bias again, but we try to see the golden nuggets that come from our difficult experiences. We try to see how did we grow from this challenge? What did we learn? How can we use that to move forward? And these are all very valuable things. I am not telling you to not do this when you reflect. Super important to do this stuff. But one thing that I think is really important to think about is that when we actually instantly move into action, when we're going through the negative stuff that we're reflecting on, the things that were hard, the things that were challenging, we actually deny our experience of our emotions. This is something that's been really, really hard for me to learn. I don't even know if I'm there yet, to be honest, but I think it's really important for it to be shared, is that when you go through and reflect on things that are difficult, you don't have to always find the positive right now. What's actually probably more important is feeling what comes up as you experience that. And if you're watching the video version of this, you can see like my hands keep coming to my heart space. And for me, a lot of my emotions are felt in that kind of area. So when you go and reflect on 2024, as I expect many of you will, don't just run away from your emotions by starting to think about the changes or how you learned and all this type of stuff, because that's really what it is. All that is just pushing your emotions down and away. Those things, again, are very important part of the reflection process, but make some space to feel it. It is terrifying, especially if you've never felt your emotions before. But the one thing that I want to remind you is that emotions actually only last moments to minutes. So when we actually measure emotion in the brain, so if you get all those electrodes attached to your head and see what's happening in your brain as you're feeling emotions, emotions don't last for days, weeks, months. And I think that's a fear, is that when we experience a negative emotion, sadness, grief, anger, whatever these things are, that they're going to rule our lives. And this is not true, because the emotion itself only lasts moments to minutes. So you can only actually measure the brain chemistry changes and the electroactivity in your brain for moments to minutes. So what that means is that the rest of that experience is mental. Okay. It's in your head, I guess. So it's your thought process that is like creating that, or making that the feeling of the emotion last longer. So when we actually sit with our emotions and allow ourselves to feel them, and goes for positive emotions too, by the way, when we allow ourselves to actually feel these things, they actually move pretty quick, pretty darn quick. So when you sit and, like, put your hands on your heart, or take a deep breath and just actually feel into your body and feel what comes up, like that annoying, awful feeling when you're going to cry and your throat gets all weird. You get the like the ball in your throat or whatever, or the prickling in your eyes. Or maybe it's like anger comes up, and that comes up maybe deep in your belly, and it's kind of a burning sensation, or the tension that comes in your shoulders. Whatever this is for you, when you sit with that, it dissolves very, very quickly, which is very cool. So sit with it. I really, really encourage this. Don't run from it, because if you don't feel that, your nervous system is going to be affected by that for sure. And this is how, things like illness actually show up for a lot of people, is that you bottle your emotions. And if you don't ever process them or let them go, then those bottle up, and those actually show up as illness in the body for many people. So it's just something to think about as you start to go through your reflection of this year. See how that kind of sits with you, and just give some space. They don't have to rule you. The other thing that can be really helpful here, because like I said, a lot of people fear that energy or that emotion is going to extend for a long period of time. And like, I get it. It's really easy to stay stuck in that emotional state. So what you can do is make sure that you have something afterwards. I'm going to call it like a bookend. Have something planned afterwards that's going to almost like kind of be almost like a ritual that helps you to just like shed that emotion. So maybe you plan for your workout at that point, because that's something that helps you to just like release some of that energy. Maybe you have a shower to like feel like you're washing all of that off. Maybe you go for a walk outside, which is really calming for the nervous system. So these types of things, whatever it is for you, something that's actually going to allow you to kind of just tap back into normal, okay, into the calm, and allow you to recenter before moving on to other things. Now that we're in December, we've done the reflection part. The other piece that we talk about a lot at this time of year is goal setting. Goal setting is really, really hard, because there's like a million and one methods out there to do it. I mean, the most common being like SMART. And if you really want to get fancy, SMARTer. And I teach SMARTer goals a lot of the time too. But I think, especially at this time of year, when we're really kind of setting the landscape for what another year is going to look for like for us, I think there's a lot of pitfalls that come with our goal setting for this kind of type of year, New Year's resolutions, all this kind of stuff. I don't want you to be one of those people that falls off the bandwagon, who sets a New Year's resolution or a New Year's goal and doesn't follow through on it. But it's also kind of human nature. But something that I think is a big problem with New Year's resolution type goals is a lot of them are BHAGs. So if you've never heard of a BHAG before, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Okay. So what it's like a big goal that's like potentially unattainable, but maybe like just within your reach if everything goes like perfectly and the stars align, you know what I mean? But we set a lot of these BHAGs, and a lot of the things that are required in order to get said goal are actually out of our control, which makes it really hard, because then we actually don't have really a chance of doing it. Like, we might have a chance of doing it, but there's so many external conditions that are playing into it that it really limits our ability to actually get there from a realistic perspective. Okay. So I think a lot of these New Year's resolutions are really, really big, even if they seem simple, even if we've written them like a SMART goal. I think they're too big. Okay. So I want you to set BHAGs. First of all, I will say that I don't think BHAGs are bad. I actually think BHAGs are great, because they're motivating, they're inspiring. They're that thing that you can hold on to. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like sometimes, especially in the winter when I'm training inside, I will be like, say on the bike trainer, and I'm like thinking about my BHAG, and I'll be like, oh man, like my legs are killing me. Maybe I should just like not do this set, or maybe I should back off the power a bit. Maybe my body's not really into this today, and maybe I'm hurt, like doing more damage than good. I start to like get all these thoughts cycling through my head, and then I think about my BHAG, where I'm like, well, the girl that is standing on a podium at a world championship, what would she do right now? And I'm like, well, she keep going. That girl keep going. That's what inspires me, right? So it's not that I actually really, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to say this out loud. Like, I don't know if I actually believe that I could ever do that. I can't even believe I said that out loud. That's like a BHAG that's been in my head forever. But like standing on the podium at a world championship, like I'm going to call it the real podium. I hate that word, but I don't know how else to explain it to you. Like I got top 3 in the race overall, not top 3 in my age group. I don't even know if that's possible. Honestly, it's probably not, but it's my BHAG, okay? It's the thing that I aspire to do. And I think about it and it motivates me, inspires me, okay? To keep going, to push through, to get up on the days that I don't want to get out of bed and get to the pool, whatever that looks like. So have those things that drive you and actually light that fire within you. They're super, 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 super important. So do that too. But when you are thinking about setting your goals for the upcoming year, I want you to think about setting tiered goals instead. Okay. So set your BHAG, have that, have fun with it, be inspired. But let's also set tiered goals. Now, what I mean by that is that means that you have kind of like, I'm going to call it like a goal theme. Okay. So maybe the theme is a race. Let's use that. It's a great example, but you can also use this in your life as well. So let's use a race as an example where, okay, so you're doing, well, let's just use me as an example. I am doing a off-road 70.3 distance race. So it's not an Ironman, it's like a gravel triathlon, but it's like the same distances as a 70.3 with a trail run as well. Okay. So that's happening. I haven't set goals for this yet. So this is like a very loose example, but how we want to set these goals is we want to think about first the bare minimum. Okay. So if you go out there, if I go out there and have like, I don't want to say the worst possible day, but like a lot of stuff goes wrong. Maybe I get a couple flats. Maybe I roll my ankle on the trail run and have to limp it out for a little bit, walk it off. Maybe there's some pretty heavy winds. Maybe the water is really, really choppy. Maybe I'll lose my goggles in the swim, whatever. Okay. It's one of those days where you're just like, ugh, how am I even here? Okay. What is happening? What is that bare minimum goal that you can expect from yourself that day? Sometimes people are like, I just want to finish it. And that's like their bare minimum goal. Okay, great. But also sometimes sometimes that in itself isn't even realistic because you're like, well, if I like double flat and I don't have any more tubes and nobody stops, like we're probably not finishing the race that day. And so this kind of also allows for you to have that conversation or that thought process with yourself about like, what does a DNF look like? Right? So what happens? Like, at what point do you pull the pin? This is important for life too, and we'll get there. But like, so that's where these bare minimum goals. Sometimes these things are really about mindset. Okay. So when we're setting, actually, let me back up a second here. When we're setting these goals, we really want to think about the things that are actually within our control. Okay. So when I talk about things that are within control, I use the acronym ACE. So you have your actions, you have your concentration, and you have your effort. So when you're setting these 3 levels of goals, these are not about times, even though those are things like I would consider time goals to be like BHAGs a little bit. Um, you can have tiered time goals as well, but realistically, you don't have a lot of control over your time. Getting on the podium is another one, qualifying, getting out like BQs, whatever that looks like. All of these things have way too many factors external to you that you have no control over. So setting goals around those is really, really challenging, which is why I kind of see them as BHAG type goals. Even if they're realistic, and maybe they're not huge goals that you consider to be big, hairy, and audacious, they're still goals that have way too many external factors for you to actually really consider them to be a realistic goal. So when we set tier goals, we actually take that ACE strategy, we take our actions, we take our concentration, and we take our effort levels, and then we set goals around that. So if you're having a bare minimum kind of a day, What kind of actions are you going to take? Where is your mind going to be? What kinds of things are you going to focus on? What kind of effort are you going to put in? Okay, so think about that. This is going to be totally different for everybody, right? Then we're going to think about the next tier. Okay, so you got your bare minimum. Your next tier is just like an average day. Nothing was spectacular. Nothing was awful. You just kind of cruise through whatever. It's a you're not like woo best day ever, but you're also not like holy like that was rough. That was a terrible day. It's just kind of it was what it was. Okay, what kind of goals can you set in that ace kind of with your actions, your concentration, your effort in that kind of average day? And then the next one is like an ideal day. And I say ideal, not perfect, very intentionally, because ideal still allows for there to be a few mistakes made, small, but also potentially small mistakes that you are well prepared to like refocus on, I guess. So if something happens, you're like, it's cool, it's not going to ruin my day, kind of a thing. Something like even something like a flat. Like if you know how to change a flat in like 2 minutes and you know that your legs are strong enough to be able to like catch up and make up those 2 minutes. Right. So like a flat might not actually take you from an ideal day to an average day. So just things to think about there. So we want to be able to set those three levels of goals. You might have multiple like smaller goals within those areas. Like maybe you actually have an A, a C, and an E in each of those categories. In the bare minimum, in the average, in the ideal day. This is the types of things we want to set goals around because these things are achievable because they are within our control. This is so important, you guys. So I really encourage you to think about that as you're setting race goals, training goals. I also want you to think about this for life goals too, though, because again, a lot of our New Year's resolutions are around some sort of life thing, right? So like, losing weight is a big one, eating healthier, like keeping our house cleaner, whatever that looks like. We have all these life goals, but we like, even as I'm saying them, like keeping your house cleaner. Okay. So even if you make that a SMART goal and you like, say you have a list of 10 things that you're going to do every week in order to keep your house super clean. And it's like, you've got all the stuff. What happens when you have the week from hell? Okay. Chances are you're not getting those 10 things done. And now all of a sudden you've become a failure because you haven't done the thing. Okay. For example, myself, I try to do 10 minutes of dishes every day. I moved into a place that doesn't have a dishwasher. And I've never lived in a house that doesn't have a dishwasher, you guys. This is wild. I've always had this as the thing for myself of like, make sure you do your dishes every night kind of a thing. But with the no dishwasher thing, I've set this like, you got to do your dishes at night because otherwise it's just wild. But when I originally started, it was like, you got to do all of the dishes. And I'm an endurance athlete, you guys. I eat a lot. I cook at home almost always. So I cook breakfast every single day. I cook lunch most days. I try to do some leftovers and like, cook multiple meals, and I cook supper. So I'm cooking pretty much 2 meals a day, either breakfast and lunch or breakfast and dinner. There is a lot of pots and pans that come along with it. There is a ton of cutlery. I'm the worst. I use so much cutlery. So I've set myself up as like, you got to do your dishes every day. But then it started to be like, yesterday is a fantastic example. So I had a day yesterday where I got up in the morning, so 6 a.m. start, did my strength training at home, went to the swimming pool, did my workout there and showered and stuff. And then I sat at the little coffee shop at the rec center and did some business work for about an hour before I had to go to my serving job, which I don't know if I've ever talked about that, but I actually serve tables on the side. Good times. I actually really enjoy it. So I went to my serving job. So I was there from 10:30 until 3. And then I started teaching some sessions with a volleyball club that evening, starting at 4:30 until 8:30. By the time I cleaned up and stuff, it was 9. I got home, I ate supper, I went to bed. Okay. It was a full day. Let me tell you, no dishes were done last night. Now, in a goal setting strategy where, New Year's resolution style, I would have not got the check mark that says, way to go, Jennifer, you're an awesome person, you did the thing. When you set tiered goals, it works because my bare minimum is that if a day like that happens, or I have lots of social plans in the evening. I know I'm going to be home late, and to me, sleep is more valuable than doing dishes most of the time. I am going to set that bare minimum goal for me as 0. Okay. It is attainable. I can do 0 dishes in a day, but the condition here is that I have parameters around that. Okay. So I have parameters around what a bare minimum day looks like. This is the same for race goals, guys. This is when you kind of, I don't want to say it's a cop out because it's not. What it actually is self-compassion. But it's allowing you to give yourself space to be like, the capacity is not there. Okay. Do I allow myself to get away with this every single day? No, because I've defined the conditions that allow me to be in that bare minimum category. Otherwise, every day is an average day when it comes to doing dishes in Jennifer's house. Okay. It's not an amazing day. It's not an awful day. So on that average day, I set myself a goal of doing my dishes for 10 minutes. And what that means is that when the timer goes off and 10 minutes is done, I have a choice. I can either say, I'm done and I'm not doing anymore, and I just like put whatever's left in the sink or leave it on the counter or whatever. Or I can say, which is how it usually goes, I have 2 pans left to wash. It's going to take me like a minute. Just finish it. Okay. But the thing here is that I allow myself that cutoff of like, if 10 minutes happens, I have checked the box. Ding, ding, done. Okay. That's the condition that has to be met. Then when I have an ideal day, I do all of the dishes. That's how it goes. So by setting yourself up with these tiered goals in your life, you're also allowing yourself to be compassionate, to hear yourself, to meet yourself where you're at, but also not just like letting yourself get away with stupidity and excuses and all of these things. So I think tiered goals work a lot better. I think it's something to consider as you're moving into 2025 and just thinking about like, what are those conditions that you're going to allow yourself to be in these different states, whether this is race goals, whether this is life goals, whatever that looks like. All right. With all of that said, there's a lot of information here. I hope that this was helpful for you. I also really love to hear from you. So if you are listening to this episode and you are like, maybe you're sitting down and doing a reflection with yourself, maybe you're like writing a Christmas letter. Maybe that's not one that you ever really want to send, but that's totally cool. Send it to me. I would love to hear your Christmas letter. I'm happy to hear all the sides of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And tell me how it went for you. Tell me how the reflection went. Tell me how it feels to feel your feelings, whether you did it, whether you had a hard time, whether you couldn't bring yourself to do it. It's all okay. Also, send me your goals. I would love to see what these tiered goals look like because I'm only one person. I work with people, I help people set tiered goals, but I only see like a little limited capacity. So send them to me. I have my Instagram and my email down in the description below. So feel free to get in touch. I love having conversations with people who are listening and engaging with my podcast. And it gets me fired up. So don't feel weird about it. I'm always happy to hear from you. The other thing to note is that if you found this episode really helpful, I think you would also really love my online community, the Mental Health PB. So every week I send out a message to my community on topics kind of like this. So it's going to be that mental health sport performance intersection. And it always gives you really practical things to put into practice. Okay. Practical things to put into practice that help you to take care of your mental health and also boost your sport performance as an endurance athlete. So if that's something that you love and something that you enjoy about this podcast, you can get little tidbits in your inbox every week instead of just every few weeks. And it's always really good stuff. I pour my heart into those messages. It's things that are kind of coming up for me as I'm moving through my world, things that I'm seeing in my clients, whatever that looks like, and messages that I feel like really make a difference. And I think you're going to like it. So if you like this, you're going to like that. The link to sign up for that is also in the description below. So definitely hit that and come and be a part of the Mental Health PB community. Thank you so much for listening. Welcome back to season 2. I know you're going to love what we have coming up. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you do not miss the upcoming episodes because they are good, you guys. Ooh, I'm not even going to say anything. There's just so many good episodes coming and you're not going to want to miss it. Hit subscribe, be here. And then we'll get you up to speed on all the things that are coming up. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. I hope that today's episode has got you thinking and has inspired you to take action towards improving your mental health. If you're looking for more tools and insights on boosting mental health and sport performance, join me in my Instagram community at Ignite Health Coaching. Be sure to drop me a DM to say hi and let me know what your biggest takeaways have been so far. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get notified every time I drop a new episode. Sending you all the strength and energy that you need to crush your training, racing, and life.